Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Chiang. Hello, and welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. When it comes to money earmarked for long-term goals like overall wealth building, financial freedom, or retirement, there are many options, and a lot of what you do will depend on factors like how much work you want to put into it and what you're comfortable in terms of risk versus returns. In the long-term scenario, I think about investing in stocks through index funds, bonds for added diversity, real estate, and private equity. When it comes to short-term money that you'll want in the next 2 to even 5 years or less than 2 years, the options become a lot more limited. It mostly consists of high-yield savings accounts, money market accounts and funds, CDs, meaning certificates of deposit, and U.S. government bonds. With short-term money, which would include money in your emergency fund, you want low-risk investments, meaning you want to preserve capital, which is another way of saying that you don't want to lose money. You generally also want to keep a portion of that money to be easy to access so that if you suddenly need a new roof or you become unemployed, that you have funds to cover those unexpected expenses. Currently, interest rates are relatively high, so you can get relatively good returns on short-term money. Wealthfront is paying 5% with an additional 0.5% interest bonus with a referral. Capital One, where I've personally been doing banking for many years, is at 4.25%. If you Google best savings account interest rates, you'll find rates at multiple banks, as well as at websites like bankrate.com, investopedia.com, and nerdwallet.com, with articles about the best high-yield online savings accounts. At the time where I've been preparing this podcast episode, which is late April 2024, these rates have ranged from 4.25% to 5.15%. The benefit of high-yield savings accounts is that you have very easy access to your money. Depending on the account, you can get immediate cash from an ATM, as well as write checks or wire money to make payments or investments. These accounts can be linked to a checking account as well. When interest rates are high, high-yield savings accounts and money market accounts offer great flexibility compared to CDs and U.S. government bonds. So what's the downside? The downside is that you really have no idea how long these interest rates will last. I shouldn't say you have no idea, but that they can go down anytime the Feds announce that they're decreasing interest rates. They can change at essentially a moment's notice. And often you don't even really get notice. You have to look at the account to see what interest rate is currently being paid. It's a double-edged sword. The interest rate could go up or it could go down. It's great when it goes up, but maybe not so great when it goes down. If you do have money that you know you won't need for at least 3 months, it might make sense to look at CDs and government bonds. The longer the time horizon you have, the more sense it makes to at least consider looking at interest rates currently for your high-yield savings accounts and CDs or bonds. It also makes sense to do that when you hear that the Feds are considering lowering interest rates. You can find announcements by the Federal Reserve Board at www.federalreserve.gov. The federal funds effective interest rate has been 5.33% in April of 2024. 4-week T-bills are at 5.28%, 3 months are at 5.26%, 6 months at 5.18%, and 1 year at 4.95%. You can see that there's clearly a downward trend on interest rates with longer-term T-bills, indicating that interest rates are thought to decrease within the year. That being said, it's entirely possible that your high-yield savings account will drop their interest rates by more than the interest rate that's being paid, for example, on that 1-year T-bill of 4.95%. If you want to lock in current rates in the next few months for the next few years, it can make sense to go with putting that money in a certificate of deposit or T-bills or T-notes. CD rates range depending on the bank offering the CD, the amount of the CD, and the length of the CD. Most banks offer CDs in the range of 6 months to 5 years. Capital One CDs are ranging from 3.9% to 5.1% interest, with that 3.9% interest rate on a 5-year CD, and that 5.1% interest rate on a 10-month promotional CD. For comparison, the 9-month CD is paying 4.25% and the 1 year is paying 4.8%. You can buy CDs at the bank that offers them, and that includes a wide variety of online banks. Treasuries can be purchased in a brokerage account, as well as from the US government directly through treasurydirect.gov. I have a whole episode on the specifics of investing in CDs. You can listen to episode 34 that aired on January 18, 2023 to learn more about CDs or certificates of deposit. Episode 85, which aired on January 10th, 2024, discussed treasuries. There are 2 episodes on I-bonds. Episode 10, which aired on August 3rd, 2022, and episode 97, which aired just recently on April 3rd, 2024. Please check out these episodes for more information, including strategies like stacking your CDs. While the goal with investing is to optimize returns while minimizing risk, in the case of high-yield savings accounts, government bonds, and CDs, the risk is overall similar since these are all investments backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. Just make sure that you're not above that $250,000 threshold per savings account. The other main risk is that you need access to the money that may be locked up in a CD or government bond sooner than its maturity date. For CDs, there's generally a penalty to cash out a CD before it matures, but it is still possible to access the majority of the funds. Depending on what time period that you're cashing out the CD and what the penalty is, you may lose some principal essentially because you haven't been paid enough interest to cover the amount of the penalty, but you're going to get most of your money back. Treasuries can be sold on secondary market, but if you bought the treasury at treasurydirect.gov, you will need to transfer the treasury out of treasurydirect.gov to a brokerage firm and then sell it through the brokerage firm. That can take a little bit of time and effort. With a US government savings bond, both the Series EE and I, you are locked in for 1 year, so you can't redeem your money for 1 year. And then after 1 year, if you hold an I bond or EE bond for less than 5 years, there's a 3% interest penalty. And there's no penalty in cashing out that bond after 5 years. One other risk when it comes to accessing your money, which I haven't really heard anyone talk about, is the risk of getting locked out of your account. It is always possible for you to get locked out of your account. Maybe you forgot your password and entered the wrong password too many times, or you forgot the answer to your security question. With most banks, it should only take a business day or 2 in order to reset your password and get you back into your account. With Treasury Direct, if multiple things go wrong, this process can take quite some time, like over a month. And that could cause a problem for you if you really need the money that's in there. At treasurydirect.gov, if you give the wrong answer to the security question 3 times in a row, you'll get locked out of your account. You'll then have to call and prove your identity by answering questions over the phone. If you fail this identity check, then you'll need to send a notarized form by snail mail to Treasury Direct. Once they receive it, they'll send you an email stating that unlocking your account can take 4 weeks or more. During that time, you won't have access to your account, which means you can neither sell securities and get your money, nor buy new securities should you want to. What can I say? It's the government, and apparently they don't really do anything fast. Do whatever you need to in order to know what answers you put for your security questions, as well as your password and your account number name, which is a string of letters and numbers. Keep that in a secure place, but make sure you actually have that information to reference somewhere. CDs and treasuries give you a fixed and therefore predictable rate of return. High-yield savings accounts give you a variable rate of return. If interest rates go up higher, then you're better off with money in a high-yield savings account. Presumably, the rate in the high-yield savings account will increase as other interest rates increase. If interest rates go lower, then you're better off locking your interest rate with something like a CD or treasury bill. CDs or treasuries may offer higher rates than high-yield savings accounts since you're actually locking up your money. But it's still possible that you might find a high-yield savings account, especially with promotional rates, that pays more than CDs or treasuries. On one hand, the goal may be to get the highest interest rate possible. On the other hand, for short-term savings, the goal really may be trying to keep the value of your money from eroding from inflation, which is what makes I-bonds somewhat appealing. When inflation was recently high, I-bonds were paying over 7% interest, well above what high-yield savings accounts or CDs were paying at that same time. However, the fixed rate portion on those bonds was actually zero, and the rate was high based solely on the inflation portion of that interest rate. For those new to I bonds, the interest rate on I bonds has a fixed component and an inflation component, which are blended together for an overall interest rate. When you buy an I bond, the fixed interest rate stays with the bond as long as you hold it, while the inflation rate adjusts every 6 months. So if you're holding any older I bonds that have a 0% fixed rate, it may actually be worth selling and purchasing either new I bonds, which currently have a fixed interest rate that's above 0%, or putting them into some other investment, like the ones I'm discussing in this episode. With high-yield savings accounts, CDs, or treasuries, there's no guarantee that future interest rates will be above the rate of inflation. In the past, there have been many times where the interest rate on these cash investments were less than the rate of inflation at that time. It wasn't that long ago that even high-yield savings accounts were offering interest rates below 1%. For example, in November 2017, the inflation rate was 2.2%, but I was earning 1.3% in my Capital One high-yield savings account. There is an annual limit of $10,000 per year per Social Security number or tax ID number for purchasing I bonds. So depending on how much you would like to keep in short-term savings, it's likely to only be a percentage of your short-term holdings. To summarize the comparison of high-yield savings accounts versus certificates of deposits or treasury bills and treasury notes, the features of the high-yield savings account include current competitive rates, meaning higher rates when interest rates go up as a pro, but also lower rates if interest rates go down as a con. You also have easy access to adding money or withdrawing funds with no penalty through your bank, though you may have limits on how much can be withdrawn in one day. With CDs, interest rates may be overall higher than with savings accounts, and you are locking in a fixed interest rate, which gives you a predictable return. However, that rate is locked, so if rates go up, you miss out on being able to secure a higher rate, but if rates go down, you essentially win. There are typically penalties for withdrawing before the term ends, and you have no ability to add more funds to a previously purchased CD. Treasury bills or notes are similar to CDs in that you're locking in a fixed rate, giving you a predictable return. Like with CDs, if interest rates rise, then you miss out on those higher interest rates. And if rates go down, then you come out ahead. You can also sell your treasury on the secondary market if you need the funds earlier than the term. And depending on market conditions, you may actually be able to sell the treasury for more or for less, depending on interest rates when you sell. If interest rates have decreased when you sell, then you'll come out ahead. But if interest rates have increased, then you'll likely have a loss. You can buy more treasuries, but you can't add money to a treasury that you previously purchased. If you haven't bought any I bonds yet this year, you may consider doing so. Until November 2024, the fixed rate on I bonds is 1.3%, and the composite rate with inflation included is 4.28% for I bonds purchased from May 1st to October 31st. The Fed did not change the fixed rate on May 1st, so it remains at 1.3%. It was actually set at 1.3% back on November 1st of 2023. There is a limit of $10,000 of I bonds that can be purchased annually per Social Security number or TIN. So if you do have a business, you could purchase I bonds for your business. If you have a spouse, you could purchase I bonds for you and your spouse. If you have children, you can actually purchase I bonds for them as well. With the current I bond, you are guaranteed to have an interest rate that's above inflation, though that doesn't mean that it's going to be higher than the interest rate that you can get from a high-yield savings account, CDs, or treasuries now or in the future. Like I said, they're currently at 4.28%, but Wealthfront is still paying, as of May 1st, 5.5% with that promotion bonus. The rate 6 months after you purchase the I bond is variable, so you don't have quite a predictable return other than it being above the rate of inflation. So on May 1st, when the new rates for I bonds were released, it's also the same day that the Fed announced that they would keep interest rates in the 5.25 to 5.5% interest range. That means that at least for now, interest rates are currently holding steady, despite prior predictions that rates would be lowered at some point this year. Original forecasts at the beginning of the year were that there would be 3 rate cuts in 2024. Current predictions are for 1 rate cut, likely in the later part of this year, potentially as early as September, but maybe as late as November or December. So this summer is really the time to think about possibly locking in fixed rates with either CDs or bonds for any short-term cash investments. Depending on when you're listening to this episode, you may have a little time to map out how much cash that you may want to put into different types of terms, whether that's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or longer. The rates you're going to get with short-term cash investments are typically going to be much lower than what you would see with investments in stocks or real estate or other investments that people generally consider exciting. Really, investments shouldn't be exciting. I think the best investments are investments that are predictable, because when they're predictable, they're more likely to happen, and we can say in a way that they're safer. After all, I don't think investing in index funds is necessarily exciting, though maybe it is exciting when there is a rally and stock prices really go up. In the end, I prefer my portfolio to be boring. I want it to grow steadily, and ideally without huge ups and downs. If you would like help in trying to figure out how much money to have in short-term investments and in your emergency fund versus what you should be putting towards longer-term investments for goals like financial freedom, that's something that I'd love to work with you on and help you make that decision for yourself, because in the end, it's really about financing your goals. If that's of any interest to you, you can sign up for a free consultation at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com. Thanks for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.